If you grew up in the 70s, you may remember The Brady Bunch. It was a sitcom about a stepfamily. Carol Brady and her 3 daughters, Mike Brady and his 3 sons. Hilarity ensues. There are other examples of stepfamily stories in pop culture. The Wicked Stepmother version, for example. But like many pop culture relationships, the truth is somewhere in between.
They're either totally problematic or they're totally angelic, you know.
That's Dawn Braithwaite, Willa Cather Professor of Communication Studies and Chair of the Department of Communication Studies at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. She knows the real story behind stepfamilies because she grew up in one, and that experience shaped her future.
I study things that I've experienced. So I was a stepchild, and the main line of my research since I've been here at UNL has been the communication of stepfamilies.
Dawn Braithwaite's experience and insight on this edition of Faculty 101.
Okay, you should switch partners now.
To be able to inspire young people.
Ace your finals.
It's really rewarding.
I love the students.
Welcome to Faculty 101, life hacks and success stories from Nebraska faculty. First up, orientation. Who is Dawn O. Braithwaite?
It's chaos.
When I arrived for our interview, Dr. Braithwaite's office is filled with packing boxes as the department readies for a move to a new building.
And we're all packed and we can't find anything.
She wants me to be clear about 2 things. It's Department of Communication, no S at the end of the word communication, and it's Dawn O. Braithwaite. The O stands for Ollendorf, her maiden name. Too long to hyphenate, but
I always wanted my family to be part of, and my father especially, to be part of who I was going forward. So I drive everybody crazy because I insist on my O, but it's important to me.
When she was 12, her mother died and her dad remarried. Only about 5% of stepfamilies form after the death of a parent.
For a lot of stepkids, if they're not getting along at their dad's house, they move over to their mom's house. But when you're in this situation we were in, you're stuck, right? And they're stuck with you. And so you have to make it work somehow. And so I think that made it extra challenging. How do you, and my father remarried quite quickly. So how do you, he basically brought a stranger into the home. And now that's one of the reasons I like to study step-parents too, because looking back from a way adult perspective, it couldn't have been easy. It must have been hard to take over 2 kids whose mother had died and move into the neighborhood. And so, these are just difficult dynamics for everybody. They hardly ever go smoothly.
An experience in junior high led Dr. Braithwaite toward her chosen career.
In 1966, I'm growing up in the 60s, and there's protests going on, there's all this stuff going on. And I become a stepfamily. Life is pretty chaotic. And I walk into my junior high classroom, and there's a poster on the wall, and I could still picture it. And it was for the Bell telephone, and it said, "Communication is the beginning of understanding." I just probably stared at that thing for, I don't know how long it was up there. And that really hit me. I'd never thought about it. In school, we were taught reading and writing and arithmetic and science, but never anything about communication. And that got me thinking. And so I think from that day forward, I gravitated toward wanting to learn more.
Next, lab work, a deeper dive into Dr. Braithwaite's research. Step-family dynamics can be difficult and chaotic, but there are ways families can navigate turbulent times. In a recent study, Dr. Braithwaite interviewed adult stepchildren who reported having positive relationships with stepparents. She identified factors that contribute to stronger bonds, including successful conflict resolution and adapting rituals and traditions to the new family.
One is called pro-social actions, which just means being nice, being friendly, doing things for people that are meaningful to them. So one stepkid talked to us about how she wanted to paint her room red, and her mom said that was ridiculous, and her stepdad said, "I'll paint your room red, and if you don't like it next year, I'll paint it something else." And that pro-social action meant a lot to her. It meant that he listened to her and valued her perspective. Another one was quality time, and sometimes those things happen together. And there was a young woman we interviewed who talked about watching, in her case, Iowa football with her stepdad. And it was just the way that they bonded and started to think about each other as father and daughter.
Another area of Dr. Braithwaite's research involves fictive or voluntary kin. And what does that mean? Well, here's a real-life example, drawing on the experience of friends of mine. On this evening, ham sizzles in a pan on the stove.
So it's going to be good breakfast for dinner.
That's Curtis Olson. Curtis and Annie Mumgard are parents to Carlos.
I'm 12 years old.
And
I'm Sophia and I'm 17.
tonight, the Olson Mumgard family gathers for dinner with Kurt Bright.
Hey everybody, we're here!
And Kathy Glenn.
I brought 2 pans of cheesy potatoes this time, unlike Easter when we ran out.
This group is a family, built over time and many meals.
We carved pumpkins together.
And Easter eggs.
Yep. And Easter eggs.
And we dye Easter eggs every year.
We carve Easter eggs and dye pumpkins every year.
Haven't we gone on a family vacation with each other for 15 years? 16 years.
We've been to a lot of your kids' concerts and
Yes.
ball games and soccer games and graduations and whatnots, which is cool because
Soon weddings.
my own daughter lives 1,000 miles away, so I don't get to do that stuff with her. So
They have traditional families they love and spend time with, but this is another kind of family.
To me, family is support. Family is people you like being with. And I would say the difference is that when you're with family, you can sometimes really get into, you have so much history and so much, like, you can start talking about the negative really easier because, you knew each other just forever. And like with us, we don't usually get into.
there's very little negative history
Right.
with us because we didn't grow up with each other sharing one bathroom.
It's an example of what Dr. Braithwaite calls fictive or voluntary kin. They are close relationships with friends that supplement and sometimes replace the traditional family. Dr. Braithwaite has studied what makes these relationships both beneficial and challenging.
I think voluntary families are really important as people geographically don't always live around their families, or they don't have a relationship, or they can't have a relationship. And so to me, it's okay to form family-like relations. They really aren't family-like. For many people, that is family. So one of the challenges is legitimizing that family. In other words, it's not accepted by society. You don't have rights to visit that person in the hospital. And so you really have to think really carefully and create, through communication, what these family relationships mean to you, what their limits are. So I think it's a really powerful family form in the modern world.
It's powerful and sometimes messy, like a traditional family. But for the Olson, Mumgard, Bright, Glenn clan, it's just life. Memories, rituals, inside jokes, and all.
He's my godfather. So hey.
The Godfather.
That is true.
That is accurate
That's right.
information.
That's right.
And Fluff father.
So I guess that kind of makes us almost family.
I am responsible for his eternal soul. He's so hosed.
We did not choose well.
Ready for office hours? How did Dr. Braithwaite get here? Originally from Chicago, Dr. Braithwaite cemented her interest in communication early on with high school activities like the debate team, theater, and music. In California, she attended community college, got a bachelor's degree from Cal State Fullerton and a master's from Cal State Long Beach before earning her PhD from the University of Minnesota. All along the way, there were mentors.
Teachers made a really big difference in my life. Going to school was a struggle. I was paying for it, and it was hard. And so to me, it was caring teaching all the way through my PhD. And it really set me on the road to want to do that for other people.
In the classroom at Nebraska, Dr. Braithwaite combined teaching with her love of research.
Teaching and research are a part of the same thing. I'm a much better teacher because I'm out there generating knowledge and I can share that with people.
As chair of the Department of Communication Studies, she's able to spread the word about the work of her colleagues.
I work with an absolutely fabulous department and group of people. They're fabulous researchers, wonderful teachers, caring humans. But it's been fun to open the doors of the department a little bit wider and help people on campus know more about us.
Now it's time for a pop quiz, random questions, life hacks, and wisdom for all of us. What advice do you have for cultivating family harmony around the table?
I think it's really important for people to sometimes come to agreement beforehand. It's okay to talk about what we're going to talk about and what we're not going to talk about and come to some agreements. And that's, I think, I study a theory called communication privacy management, and it's okay to understand things that we shouldn't talk about. All communication is not necessarily good communication. And if you can't do that, I think it's just, you can be skillful about deflecting, just not taking the bait on communication, because now we're so divided politically. And so, I just encourage people sometimes to talk about it, come to some agreements about what's on and off limits for their holidays, and I think sometimes people choose not to go. Sometimes people have to put themselves in healthier situations.
What would you say is the best way of communicating? Should we rely less on our technology?
Every channel of communication has its ups and downs. So for example, for parents, and you've got kids who want to establish some autonomy, texting is great, right? You can get to them without being too intrusive. You can find out where people are. I don't think that any technology is inherently good or bad. It just has to be used responsibly.
What advice do you have for students?
I'm very devoted to the concept of choice. So when I was asked to give a graduation speech years ago at my first university, my speech was on celebrating the choice, that we're always making choices. And as faculty, I think that's one of the main things we teach students. You may decide to go somewhere else on Friday, and I might even support that choice, but there's consequences to choices. And I think that in life, we always have to accept the good consequences and the bad ones. And then the other one I think is very related is this idea of being mindful, trying to learn from, always paying attention to what you're doing and why, and learning from it, so that the future choices you're making hopefully are informed by the past, and you're not just barreling forward and making the same errors over and over and over again.
What advice do you have for step-parents?
I have step-parents find out about my research and call me or email me, and they're usually just feeling pretty desperate. And one of the things I'm very close to my stepmother today, and one of the things I can say is, hang in there. There's a good chance it's going to work out, but you have to really work at it. And that's communication. That work is communicative work to form a family.
And finally, graduation day. Final thoughts and what we can learn from the Chicago Cubs.
This is my Chicago Cubs bat. I don't know if you can see, but it's got my signature here. And
the bat is a gift from a group of former graduate students who knew their professor is a huge Cubs fan.
And that was just one of the nicest things anybody's ever done for me. It was just so out of the blue and unexpected and appreciative. It really means a lot to me.
And when the Cubs won the World Series,
I went crazy. I just, all Cubs fans were waiting for this all of our lives. And so I cried, and we were just jumping all over the place and taking pictures. And it was just an unbelievably happy day.
Dr. Braithwaite says we can all learn from the grit and glory tale of Chicago's no longer cursed baseball team.
You have to persevere. You have to stick in there and do what you love. I think Chicago Cubs fans have a good theory of life.
That's it for this episode of Faculty 101. Thanks to Dawn O. Braithwaite for sharing her family story and her communication advice. In the show notes, you'll find a link to more about her research and a picture of that beloved Chicago Cubs bat. This is the last episode of Faculty 101 for this year, but we'll be back in February for Season 2. Faculty 101 is produced by the University of Nebraska-Lincoln.
When I first came here, the Huskers had just won the national championship, and I thought, it's the first place I've ever lived with a winner, and so they'll get there.